And I would agree with that. I've witnessed a number of things where technique is taught, and there might be some discussion in the text even. How does this text make you feel? How can we interpret this text? How do we apply it into my own life? But then there's a particular set of skills needed to take those feelings and then apply it back to the technical performance. And that's where I think the biggest disconnect lies, because I do think a lot of choir.
Welcome everybody to the Choir Genius channel. I'm thrilled today to be talking to Justin Miller. Justin, for those people who don't necessarily know all about you like I do, what's just give us a few words on your background, what you're all about, what you're doing now.
Yeah, for sure. So I am the former director of the Westminster Chorus, which is a multi-time international championship chorus of the Barbershop Harmony Society. We've also won international contests outside of barbershop. So we were the 2009 Choir of the World at the International Musical Eisteddfod in Llangollen, Wales. We performed at American Choral Directors Association conferences. That is not the only community or barbershop choir that I've directed. I've directed a number of over the years. I also spent 15 years as a high school choir teacher, and am now transitioning into more a kind of an independent musician, composer, arranger, conductor, clinician, coach, all that kinds of stuff.
Having directed, as you said, the Westminster Chorus, as well as I think the Masters of Harmony and a bunch of others. Currently, I think you are in Portland, Oregon, directing Vocal Summit.
That's correct.
So I know they would love to hear from you what you think the keys to success are with musical direction. Why don't we start there?
One of the things that choirs do, regardless of level, reputation, age, demographic, is that there's a regular habit of bringing in outside ears to help the choir. Sometimes it's only because, regardless of how experienced the director or the conductor might be, having somebody else say the exact same words with a different voice and a different body, all of a sudden it's brand new information, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that we do. And in the conducting position, the director's position, I would get really excited about those types of things, giving new information, a new set of skills to add to my toolbox or whatever.
Well, I couldn't agree more with that. I've seen it myself 100 times. I was a frontline director myself for a few years and brought in a bunch of coaches. And I think that, as far as I know, that's very common in the barbershop world, particularly among the ones who are highly competitive. But I wish it happened more in the rest of the world. My impression is that a lot of the time, if you have a director of a choral ensemble, it's like getting a coach would be weird, like it would be a threat, like it would be...
Perhaps. I mean, and there might be an area of those groups where that might feel the case. I know in an educational setting, speaking from my 15 years of high school experience, that was kind of a norm. You'd got someone where maybe it's a local university professor that's coming in. They have the benefit of for them, it's maybe a recruiting thing. But it's another ear, an opportunity for the singers to improve. I know as a director, I have my own biases. And I'm going to be listening to my own hot button things and improving those. But there might be a whole other list of technical or artistic things that I have left on the table just because it doesn't match my own bias. So getting another ear in there.
Coaches even when you were working as a music teacher in a school?
Yeah, that's pretty common. It's pretty common to get those clinicians. And to be fair, that was often leading into a festival season or a competition season. It wasn't necessarily like, this is something that we do all the time, all year round. But I would say that the good teachers do that. They understand that, not that their own experience and their own expertise is limited, but as a musical leader, we have an obligation to provide a service to the singer, right? Regardless of what level you're doing, particularly if you're in a community choir where the singers are of a volunteer basis, they are there because they're getting something out of it as well. So to provide a different level of entertainment, engagement, just, something different to keep rehearsal interesting and engaging, I think is really important. So that to have that outside voice, that voice is good. But going back to the original question of like success, understanding and growing with those outside voices is good. On the other hand, I found that I was constantly chasing the shiny new thing.
Okay.
oh, this coach came in, this clinician came in, and they said something a particular way that was inspiring. And then in the weeks following that event, I tried to solve every problem with that new toy.
Ah,
Everything was that, like, oh, now let's remember what they said. Let's try that. And after a while of the pendulum swinging hard in one direction, I would then have to self reflect and being like, yes, that's good. It worked. What did it work for? Now I have to go back to the other toolbox that I've been developing for years or decades and go back to the tried and true methods and just add that new shiny thing. I think we're always trying to chase the avant-garde, you know?
I know a lot of coaches when they come in and they'll say, you know, what I'm saying may work for you, it may not work for you. You got to take what you like, take what works for you, and that seems to be the way to go. And then when I was directing, I also found that certain things I would just go, well, that's never going to work, and I didn't try it. But a lot of them I definitely did.
Those also exist. So just having the clarity to say this works, but it doesn't necessarily fit the artistic vision or my leadership style, and so we're gonna try it tonight, but it might fall by the wayside. All of those things.
So when you look back at your directing experience, what was the how did you get people to change their habits? I mean, a director, certainly if you want change in the ensemble, you want people to do different things than they would just automatically do and build up those habits over time. What are some of the devices and methods that you might use to get a group to just be better in a sticky way?
So that's awesome. There is a phrase I use every once in a while that's coming to mind, and it's all about making a decision and telling the group that regardless of what you're doing, you want to make a decision. You want to make a decision to be excellent. You want to make a decision to be artistic. And not making a choice is also a decision. A decision perhaps towards mediocrity, which we don't want. So it's all about training those decisions. And I think as a choir director, a conductor, whether it's just the job itself or the types of personalities that are in the job, I'll say I can want to be very controlling. And mandating that something happens a particular way is not necessarily good for growth. So how do we enable our singers, our musicians, and our ensembles to have a growth mindset? And again, I'm going back to the decisions that they're making. So let's, for example, say we're singing a musical passage, and maybe we get to a particular sonority that's a little bit out of tune. Maybe it's out of balance. Maybe the vowel isn't right, and I might give them just an opportunity to try it again. I would say over 50% is just going to be better because you were giving them the opportunity without again, I used the word bias earlier, without applying your bias.
Which they probably appreciate because you get to treat them like adults then, right? You get
Right.
to, you're saying you trust them to be better.
Trust them to be better. And then if they don't make the right choice, or maybe they do something else that's not quite better, then you can say what you're hearing. Hey, I'm hearing that the vowel is not quite aligned. How would we fix it? Can we give it a try? And they go, oh yeah, I remember when an hour ago we did a vocal warm up and we did some calibration of what our vowel sounds and shapes, sensations, vocal posture should be. I remember that. I'm going to make a decision now with an no, with an invitation, but I'm gonna make that choice. I'm gonna make the decision. Um, on those same lines, and I don't know who I heard this from, so I wish I could give them credit. But it's become part of my own vocabulary, and that is once is a fluke, twice is a coincidence, it's three times when you got it. So let's say again you're going through the thing, something's not right, maybe it's out of tune, maybe it's a vowel, maybe it's a rhythm thing. Um, okay, if it wasn't quite right, what would you do to fix it? Hey, we did it. That was it. Let's go back. Make the decision again. Make the choice again. Make the choice to be excellent one more time. Okay, that third time. Okay, now you got it. Now you started developing some skills. Now you started to kind of rewire the brain synapse to do things the right way, and move forward in that regard.
An amateur singer will practice until they get it right, and a professional will practice until they can't get it wrong.
Absolutely, absolutely. Actually, in my rehearsal last night, we had a conversation about that, about how to practice on your own. And I think in this modern day and age, particularly if you're a community choir like mine, where some read music, some don't, where you provide learning materials, you provide recordings, you provide all sorts of technology. And I think a hobbyist musician might listen to it a couple of times before rehearsal to become familiar. but they're not necessarily doing the labor to really get in their mind's eye. And so we had this moment last night where he said, when you practice, you got to find where the wrinkle is. And then the technology that we have, we you can loop that audio, you can slow down that audio, iron out the wrinkle. And have you shouldn't give the opportunity to a second wrinkle until you iron out the first. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm doing it. I'm going over and over again. Great. Now I can move on to the second. And I think too many of us are hobbyist singers. Just I'm going to listen to the recording.
Yeah.
Okay, I've heard it. I'm ready for rehearsal.
Well,
No.
also, I think a lot of people find it's just more pleasant to rehearse the parts you already know well, right? You get that great
Right.
feedback, like, yeah, I'm rocking this part, but I don't want to work on that other section where I don't understand it yet or I can't execute it.
Yeah, and again, we're providing a service for our singers. Yes, we might want to reach high heights, whatever that is based on the organization, but at the same point, like we are providing a service. They want to have fun. Learning music sometimes is not fun. But that reminds me of one of my favorite choral pieces. It's not in English, but the English translation is striving in suffering brings redemption.
Okay.
And sometimes learning music is just struggling. It's like, oh, I can't get this. There's this weird, awkward tritone leap. I'm having difficulty getting it. But you know what? It will be so satisfying when you finally get it right.
Right. So as a director, I think if you divided your activities into two sort of broad categories, there's the technical stuff and there's everything else, right? The emotional stuff. And I think my impression is that a lot of choir directors stop after that first bucket. They're like, we're gonna make this beautiful and we're gonna make it correct, but that's it. And I think that's a massive missed opportunity. I would love to hear how you think about that and how you divide your time up in rehearsal.
That's a great question. So I'm going to start by saying it was the Northwest Conference of the American Choral Directors Association. This was several years ago. I don't remember the year, but I attended a seminar, a session about choir performance. And coming from the barbershop community, which is that kind of stuff is second nature to us, perhaps because our judging system has a category based or focused on that. But I was sitting there kind of like cross-armed, being like, okay, what are you guys going to say? And was just enamored by all these choir directors that their minds were being blown by just kind of these basics of what we can unlock within a text and how we can incorporate acting into the performance. So you mentioned, I think a lot of choir directors stop at the technique, and I would agree with that. I have witnessed a number of things where technique is taught, and there might be some discussion in the text even. How does this text make you feel? How can we interpret this text? How do we apply it into my own life? But then there's a particular set of skills needed to take those feelings and then apply it back to the technical performance. And that's where I think the biggest disconnect lies. Because I do think a lot of choir professionals analyze the text, discuss the text, but it's that missing link, right? How do I balance that in rehearsal? Carefully. So in my Westminster days, it was, for those unfamiliar, it's a chorus that was based out of Los Angeles, California, in the greater Los Angeles area. And we had a number of professional actors in the group. And specifically, there was a guy by the name of Mika Sloat. People might know him. He was in Paranormal Activity, if anybody remembers that kind of found footage horror film from 15, maybe 20 years ago. And he and a couple of other actors kind of created this idea of heart versus mind. Some people might say left brain versus right brain,
Right.
but I always forget which side of the brain is which, so I like heart and mind.
That means you're a right-brained guy.
Okay, cool, great, very, very good. So, so the technical things, your rhythms, your notes, your pitches, your rhythms, or I guess pitches and notes are the same thing, whatever. Those types of things, the what questions, what am I doing and when, fall into the mind category. And I would say in a rehearsal process, and I don't mean in a single rehearsal, I mean in a season, in an
Yeah.
arc of learning a song. The first several weeks are almost exclusively mind, almost exclusively what. And then we begin to fold in some heart language. It might be analysis of text. It might be asking the people in the ensemble how do they relate to the songs, things that might be happening in their personal lives if they're comfortable sharing that might inspire others to feel that way, and begin to unlock some things. And the further along we get in that process, I try to stop using mind language. I try to stop saying, hey, we're a little bit under the pitch. Can we sing a little bit higher on the pitch? Or, hey, can we have a brighter placement to fix this or whatever? I might say something along the lines of, hey, I'm noticing a little bit of a sag. Can this line be sung more joyfully?
Right.
Can it be sung with more sunshine? Using some of this more evocative, metaphorical, imaginative language that's not going to be analyzed, but is going to be imagined and discovered and cultivated. And the longer I get in the process and the closer we get to that performance, I do my darndest to not say, hey, basses, you're flat. Hey, tenors, you're late. Or even, hey, that rhythmic figure on the and of four. Because what is that going to do? That's going to remove some artistic autonomy and go back to analysis.
Yeah, absolutely.
We want to be judgment free in our ability to make art.
This was episode 1 with Justin Miller. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. And if you want to see more episodes with Justin, then subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon.